So in our last episode, we talked about the age-old question of whether aircraft mechanics, aircraft maintenance technicians, aircraft maintenance engineers were considered skilled or unskilled. And then after citing an article published in 2017 by the Aircraft Mechanics Fraternal Association, I was about to say organization, AMFA, it's been highlighted, at least to us, that AMTs, AMEs, aircraft mechanics are in fact considered skilled labor. But that article also showed some of the convoluted ways that how our professional occupation is coded. Like a lot of stuff is very convoluted and redundant. And today we're going to kind of take a dive into what these codes were. I know we wrapped off a bunch of them during the last episode, but what these codes are, what they say about those particular occupations, and then talk about some numbers they project for that occupation, if they even offer numbers. So per that AMFA article, aircraft mechanics fall into 4 groups, starting at the major group, which is 49-0000. And that code, that major group, is huge.
Yeah, it's massive.
There's so many occupations in this.
Yeah, it's installation, maintenance, and repair occupations. So think about just beyond the aviation realm alone.
Yeah. And, and then that and when we say encompasses a wide variety, it encompasses a lot. So it goes from electrical install repairs to home appliance repair to refrigerator mechanics, you name it. If at any point in time it involves you picking up a wrench as a trade or an occupation, that's where this code falls in. And you can imagine there's a lot of things that involve you using tools, and that encompasses a lot. Based on the stats from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's about 5.7 million employees classified under this major group of install, mechanics, and repair. That's a lot.
And this is just within the United States, by the way.
Yes, just within the U.S., but 5.7 million. So you imagine somewhere in that 5.7 million is an aircraft mechanic. And then considering the major groups, these major groups, it's not besides just installation repair. Major group classifications, they just give a general overview summary of an occupation. And it's interesting to see just how the highest concentration of this job, particularly with 49-0000, the highest concentration in that job code are automotive techs, precision equipment repair, commercial and industrial machinery, and household goods repair. Imagine that. And just if you're familiar with those occupations, those wages and those labor statistics can vary wildly, right? So say you got an electrical installer, someone who installs the wiring in your house, his salary can be, I don't know, $50 an hour. And then you have someone whose sole job is to change the light bulb in a refrigerator, just the light bulb, and his wages can be I don't know, $18. Right. So, but we're grouping all of that into just this one major group. So
now there are different subcategories, and there's about, looks like 4 of them, at least per the this SIC code website, or SOC code, excuse me. I don't remember if you know what that stands for. 6. I don't know if it's Special Operations code or something. I can't remember what that stands for.
I think it's a Special Occupation code.
We were occupation. Close. What a jackass I am.
we're close. Special Operations. We
Special Operation. What, we fucking SOG out here running around, running and gunning.
Right.
So under that SOC code 49-0, there's 49-1000, which is supervisors of installation, maintenance, and repair workers. 49-2000, electrical and electronic equipment mechanics, installers, and repairers. 49-3000 is the vehicle and mobile equipment mechanics, installers, and repairs. And then the Goku level, the 49-9000, other installation, maintenance, and repair occupations. And for those of you that didn't get the Goku reference, that was the level over 9,000. So
over 9,000.
Nerding out over here. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I'll tell you. That's like nostalgia 101 right there. I love it. We can go on such a huge rant about nerd stuff like Dragon Ball and all that. So with these subcategories, these minor codes, as MVP said, it's vehicle and mobile equipment repair. That can vary a lot as to what it is in itself. So we're dialing it down just a little bit more into a minor, more specialized group, air quote specialized. And that goes into automotive mechanics, diesel mechanics, heavy equipment mechanics, miscellaneous, which is the over 9,000 level. Now, miscellaneous, it sounds very broad, but it also means like bicycle mechanics, recreation equipment,
mobile homes and stuff.
Yeah, right.
But also under that, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, and then somewhere in all that line again exists the aircraft mechanic.
Yeah, it's 49-3010. Well, at least on the SOC code, it's aircraft maintenance or aircraft mechanics and service techs. And so that's under the 49-3010.
Right. And that's what the SOC would consider the broad group. You see how it's
now listen to the total employment, right? We started off with 5.7 million. Drill down to the aircraft maintenance technicians, the 49,3000, which was 1.2, and then drilling down to the 49,3010. Total employment, at least for the SOC code, is 133,310.
Jesus.
So that's out of the 5.7 mil.
What a drop.
Yeah, no kidding, huh?
That's a big drop. Now here's the part that got confusing to us, especially when we first read that article in the last episode. So it goes 49,300, which is vehicle and mobile repair. Then you have 49,3010, which is aircraft mechanics and service techs. It goes from minor group to broad, broad, and then there further exists a detail group, which is 49-3011, which is also aircraft mechanics and service technicians. And that's the job code that exists for an aircraft mechanics / aircraft maintenance technician. If you were to possess an FAA license and go to an airline, that would be your air quote job code is 49-3011.
And the average hourly wage is $32.27 with an annual average wage of $67,000.
Right. I mean, that sounds good. That sounds great, especially if you're like fresh out of school or fresh with your license, nary enough experience to hold a license.
Still living at home, all those people, especially in today's day and age, people to afford to live off of that.
Yeah, no kidding. And that was the part that kind of confused us too, because it goes from major, minor, then broad, and then detailed. But broad and detailed say the exact same thing. So I mean, like,
right.
It started to get extremely confusing, especially for us. So we were reading the article in the last episode, like, what the hell is this thing saying? It's the same thing. It got real confusing. And likewise so. So imagine like you're trying to do statistics on this. You're trying to pull some math. Which job code or which group code would you use to get the full average of that occupation? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And if you just say, oh, let's do the detail group. So, okay, now you're stratifying from a very concentrated group, which may or may not encompass the entire population. And then say if you go for the higher tier subgroups or even the minor group itself, now you're pulling in these different occupations that don't even factor into that specific job. And like I said, it varies widely. Once you go beyond the broad group, you're going into automotive techs, refrigerator techs, freaking bicycle technicians and mobile home repairs. I'm like, how does that group in at all with aircraft mechanics? Well, apparently it does, because when you pull stats
in the parent category,
right.
But under the 3011, which is very specific. But then it says occupation examples: A&P mechanic, aircraft engine mechanic, aircraft engine specialist, airframe and power plant mechanic. I don't know why it spelled it out in that one. Right. Airframe mechanic, airplane rigger, FAA certified power plant mechanic, flight test mechanic, helicopter mechanic, jet engine mechanic, and propeller driven airplane mechanic. Yeah. So I guess must be able to break it down into. I know for like the A&P, you can just have the airframe side, or you can just have the power plant side, or both. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting.
Yeah, and then it breaks it, and then it says here like sample job titles, as MVP was saying, is like avionics installer, avionics system integration specialist, avionics technician, electronic technician, but then. You'd see here as it dives down further, it says does not include avionics technician in the 49-3010 or 3011 job code.
Like, yeah, avionics techs are actually a 49-2091.
Right. So like it's funny like how it says like this is a sample job code, but it doesn't include the actual job code to aircraft mechanics. Or the aircraft maintenance technician. Weird.
What's interesting is that from a mechanic to an avionics tech, the wages are actually here. They're a few cents less or a couple $100 annual. But from my experience, avionics have always made more than the mechanics.
Oh, most definitely. And I want to say, because most people when they go to become avionics technicians, they have like a whole slew of knowledge just swimming around in their noodle, and their knowledge base is equivalent to like an associate's degree in electrical engineering. And that's based on my experiences too, because these individuals have to like know digital logic to a workable degree where like a green screen pops up and they know exactly what's going on, or they can figure it out in a relatively short time what's going on. Can aircraft mechanics do the same? Absolutely. But, like their training pipeline is not so in depth into those fields. Like an aircraft maintenance technician will have some rudimentary understanding of digital logic and the electronics and how they work and why they work, versus like an avionics technician, like he knows it down to the atom, what it's supposed to be doing. In most cases, I've seen some dead ringers in my time, but for the most part, like just being a certified avionics technician is damn near close to just having an associate's degree in electrical engineering. And I think that's kind of funny, like how they're coded as electrical installers and repairers from their minor job code, which is the 49-2000, just 2000 in general.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, like Six said, we've mentioned a couple things, but this includes like people who pour concrete, farm equipment repair, electrical power generation, power lines, roofing, plumbing and heating, and drywall, machine shops, manufacturing of hardware like nuts, bolts, washers, etc.
Yeah,
sporting goods stores. Newspaper publishers, television yeah, it's crazy. And then so I'm digging down through while Six is talking here. I'm digging down through like the supervisor section, and under the supervisor is all these things: R&D areas, temporary help services, private security systems, landscaping, mental health centers, paramedic stuff, hospitals. Like, God, it just keeps going. Gym, you work at a gym, like a physical fitness stuff. It's pretty wild how far down it goes.
Oh, most def.
Or how much is covered under like a parent category.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, so like imagine like say you being a statistician and you're trying to get like an accurate representation of a job. And if you miss the mark on which group to pull from, you can have a vastly different representation of a population based on what group you just pulled from. And we kind of run into this on a daily as quality assurance. Like if we pull a sample from a lot, like how big a sample or where, at what point, and how many, that can have vastly different results. Like, and especially when it comes time to determining which one is the problem. So that kind of is almost like a shot in the dark. Like you would think like, okay, if I want a full representation of aircraft mechanics, I'm gonna pull from the detailed group. But that's assuming that the people that are in those areas are rightly coded for that occupation, or if they're even certified, right? Because there's times too where you have people who are aircraft mechanics or technicians, but they're not licensed or certified to do it yet, right? But it doesn't differentiate that, and that too can be vastly different because you could have like a shop that has like have a shop of 50 aircraft mechanics. 10 of them are certified, and the other ones are just working under an authorization to do it. But you just see, okay, shop has 50 aircraft maintenance techs, so we're good, right? We can dial down on the schools, we can dial down on funding, we can dial down on this, which may not be the case for that particular shop. Like maybe they're freaking hurting for mechanics, or that shop of 50 has guys who they're certified, but they're all kind of like inching their way towards retirement, or they're very close to retirement. We don't know that. And you're just thinking, oh, well, they're good. We can dial down on funding. We can dial down on schooling and all that stuff. And then 3 years later, those 10 that are certified retired, and now you're in the hole for 10 more technicians. But then that shop will report it as, oh, we need 40 technicians because or when they say like we need 40 technicians to replace the 10 that we got because of experience and certifications and all that, your stats math will say, no, you're only in the hole for 10 instead of 40. Where the hell did you get 40? Like, and then that's also like a big math difference too, when we saw about the job growth for aircraft mechanics, the 3011s or 3010, 3011s. It says there are about 130 some thousand or 120 to 130,000 employees right now in the US with aircraft maintenance technician as their job code. And based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics and a bunch of other websites, they say the job growth for aircraft mechanics from 2020 to 2030, about 10 years, is about 12,000 jobs, or 12,000 job openings between 2030 or 2020 and 2030. Now, is that 12,000? Is that 12,000 a year from 2020 to 2030? Or is it 12,000 period over the span of 10 years? Again, like, it doesn't say this, but if we were to take it as 12,000 jobs in the span of 10 years, like, that's a huge difference. Because
right, and I think we touched on a few episodes back where Boeing, I think, did a labor study, and they were projecting 120,000 jobs. So, who's drawn their conclusions from what source at this point? I don't know, because 12,000 to 120,000 in the same time frame is vastly different numbers.
Yeah, that's like a tenfold difference. I mean, which is it, man? Like, do you need 1,200 a year, or do you need 12,000 a year? That's a big difference,
right?
And then that kind of goes into what we were saying from this one and our previous episode, is like your math or your projections can vary wildly, and it's all dependent on what those codes are. And our previous one, we mentioned like why this matters is exactly this. Like, you have a tenfold difference between from what the labor statistics is seeing versus what the industry itself, or at least one representation of the industry, is saying. Huge difference. And
yeah, and you really got it. And as you know, I think these labor categories are going to change depending on those numbers. If it's the 12,000 over 10 years, the codes probably won't change that much. But if it's 120, I almost feel like they would have to make it its own sort of more specific, or drill down from the parent code, the 49 quad 0, even more for aircraft maintenance, just because it's going to be such a massive influx of people. I mean, hell, the numbers that we just said are nearly going to double.
Oh yeah,
from what's in the industry now, maintainer wise. But it'll be good if that happens, because I think maybe we can get maybe a little bit more specialized and increase these wages and salaries and such. For those of us in this field, I think that would be a positive side. Now, the other side of it is is just like this. With a field flooded with people, how do you set yourself apart, right? How do you get yourself to be, the higher paid in the shop or whatever else, other than, I guess, being a lead and having proven your worth at that point? But it's kind of like I'm seeing this already, at least on my dealings with the corporate side of things. They've pushed degrees for so long that now everybody has a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not good enough anymore. How do you set yourself apart? Well, I've got time and service, right? But they say to do this job, you have to have a degree. So, okay, you've got the time and service and degree, but because of that, you want more money, where they can go pay this dude right out of school over here who has a degree as well, but not even an eighth of the experience you do, and they're going to hire that person because they can pay him nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So how do you set yourself apart then now? Or if you're competing, if everybody has a degree and you're all competing for the same job, so having a degree almost means nothing anymore. Now you have to go step up to that next level beyond that in schooling, and then you got to press on from there, and then eventually everybody will have that, and then it'll have to be the next. We really will have a bunch of plain doctors.
Right.
Running around, everybody. Well, I've got a PhD in sheet metal. Oh, do you? Oh, well, I've got a PhD in neurons and protons and electrons. Well, that sounds fancy. What do you do? I replace nav components and others when they fail. Do you tear them apart on the bench and actually fix them down to the diode? No, I just swap them out. But the paperwork sounds good.
Right.
Just that kind of shit.
Yeah. Speaking of that, with the avionics technicians, right? They're based on this statistic right here. This says there are only 21,200 employees that are rated as avionics technicians.
I wonder if that's with the FCC license.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one too. Because don't most avionics techs, when they finish their training, they have an FCC license?
Yeah,
or they're supposed to, right? Like, because
they're supposed to, right? Yep.
Because they're dealing with comms and stuff.
Yep.
And projected growth for avionics technicians based on this statistic is 1,700 between 2020 to 2030. I take that as a no, because 1,700, no freaking way. Maybe like 1,700 today.
Yeah, I was going to say, because everything's moving away from all fly-by-wire and upgraded nav equipment and upgraded comms equipment, and it's just I think they're going to need more of them than they will maintainers. But that being said, they'll probably just take maintainers and just punch them through so that way you can be the jack of all trades.
Right.
Within the shop,
Yeah. I mean, kudos to those individuals who can go through that kind of a push and retain all of it, because there's so much information that I've had, man, and we've, myself and MVP have crossed platforms so many times, and over time, like, those platform knowledge, it crosses. It starts to mesh together, and you start to forget which one was what. Especially if it's the same plane that has like 5 or 6 different variants. And then
right.
And then you have a second platform that has another 5 or 6 variants, and all of it starts to jumble together. Like, the frequencies start to mesh. I'm like, what's what again, right?
Yeah, what was I working on again?
Right.
Well, was I pulling knowledge off of an Embraer to fix this this helicopter? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe. Who knows?
But that kind of goes into what we saying in previous episodes, where, like, you don't memorize stuff, right? Everything's always by the book. Everything has to be by the numbers, because exactly that, things will start to mesh. But
even though your annual training dictates that, set up by your company dictates that you memorize stuff. But then when you miss it, they're like, how did you miss this question? Well, we don't memorize tech data. That's the answer you give them. And they're like, Well, you have to memorize it for this training. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. No, that's not how it works. That's how we lose our license.
Right.
Yeah. But that's interesting, though, especially for avionics technicians, only 1,700. I can tell you right now, you will probably find 1,700 jobs today for avionics technicians. And based on our previous episode, as MVP has alluded to, especially with drones and stuff like that, avionics tech is going to get more and more demanded.
I mean, for my program right now, we are in dire need of good avionics techs, and we just can't get them.
Right.
Either one, they're being, they're happy where they're at and they're being, compensated well for their time, or two, we're getting a bunch of people right out of school, or three, and this is probably the more true than not. It's a clearance thing. They kind of only want to hire people right now with an active clearance, and so that is obviously severely limiting our pool to draw from. But hopefully that'll open up here in the near future, and we can start hiring people without an active clearance. But again, your job would be pending being able to obtain a clearance.
Right.
But anyways, hopefully that'll give a more broad pool to draw from. Maybe we can pull from some of our international friends here that are listeners to the show, and
right.
And bring them on board and get some of their knowledge in there.
Absolutely. If as all our international listeners, please, if you guys want to come on, man, please let us know. And then it's funny you mentioned like eventually we're all going to become plane doctors. That kind of sparked my brain about how EASA certifies its mechanics and technicians. Because if you see some of the certifications like our counterparts in Europe have to go through, they go through a shit ton of schools. And that's just
actually over there, their title is state engineer.
Engineer, right? You're absolutely right. And rightfully so, because of the amount of schooling these guys go through. I think we mathed it out one time, like their total school, if they were to max out every single certification known to that organization, it was like about 16
years of school, like more
16 years,
legit doctor stuff.
Yeah.
Time in school for like doctors too. That's crazy.
That's a lot, right? And it's kind of scary to picture that happening here in the U.S. with the FAA rules. Like, can you imagine someone being trained up for 16 years on no more than 3 airframes, right? Right? Because EASA, you're only allowed to be rated for 3 airframes or 3 platforms. I mean,
at a time, yeah.
So imagine that, right? Like you're 16 years in on 3 platforms. Granted, some of them kind of blend together and stuff, but imagine that. So like that's like your whole life. And so if you were to take a turn for the worse, or you would have to change careers, your whole life, 16 years of your livelihood just went down the drain, So
yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But I understand the method to the madness behind it as well, right? You're a no kidding, no matter what happens on that airframe, like you've already probably got the fix mapped out in your head. You know what I mean? Because you're so knowledgeable on every system within that airframe that you probably like. There's like, oh, we came back code 2 or 3 for whatever. Oh, what's the write up? Yeah, no worries, I got that.
Right? They know what's wrong just by based how the aircraft's flying.
Yeah. So why are we talking about for 2 episodes here these labor codes and such? Well, it's so you kind of have a general understanding of where you fall within the spectrum of all these other entities and occupations within the country. It's so you kind of have an understanding of why the payout is sort of the way it is, but also so you can educate yourselves and we've educated ourselves, on really what you're worth.
Yes.
Pending your accreditations and such. Six and I, again, as he's mentioned in the last episode and several before, but now we have the knowledge as to why it was this way. Running whole airfields. I mean, from production to flight test to training to hell, even they would come to us with facilities complaints, and we'd have to coordinate all that stuff. Right. We're like, God, why are we getting paid what we're getting paid? And it's because we looked it up, and we were technically classified as clerks.
Yeah, that really pissed me off that day. And someone amongst our group actually did a fair labor assessment or something like that. I can't remember what term he used, but he looked it up as to our job, what our job qualifications were, our job duties, our knowledge, skills, and abilities were. And it basically totaled out to we were supposed to be a director of maintenance or almost like a director of at minimum a director level. And our median wage, bare ass minimum, down in the dumps minimum was $110K, which was vastly more than what we were getting paid at the top out rate for our job occupation.
We were maxed out in our occupation and still making at that point 30 to 40,000 less than what we should have been.
Yeah, and that was eye opening. That was very shocking, and it was one of those what the fuck moments. Why are we getting paid so low? Why are we being classified as this? And he said, she said, at this point, we could only assume why. My guess on that one is because we want you to do the work, but we don't want to pay you that much. And at one point, someone actually said it to our faces where your work is essential, but we're not paying you that much, or it's not worth paying you that much. We're well, I guess your airfield doesn't need to fly today. So,
and it's basically in what I kind of just said a little bit ago is, you have the experience in the skill set to do this, but we can also hire somebody for near next to nothing. And it's going to be a rough go for a while, but eventually they'll pick it up, or not, or they'll have somebody there who's just accepting of those wages and willing to work the hours that they were. But for us to make that place run, God, we were there 12 to 15 hours a day, 5 days a week to ensure everything kind of went off without a hitch. Right. So, it's kind of one of those, know your worth. This is why we're kind of doing this stuff. Know your worth. And also to provide some understanding. If you're kind of going through a similar thing that Six and I had gone through, essentially going, Jesus Christ, I can't believe we're making, we're surviving, but for as much as we're doing, we should be banking way more, we feel, but we're why aren't we? We're the one-stop shop for everything that happens around here. And that includes even quality stuff, we're the everything. And it was basically one of those, anytime something would happen, nobody would put forth any brain power. It was just, I don't know. What'd you do? Well, I told control. Well, what's control doing? Well, they said they're going to look into it. And then you're getting beat down by different department management. You need to provide a path forward. I got 18 fires happening right now, and I'm peeing on one of them. I'm pouring a Dixie cup of water on the other one. I'm trying to blow the third one out, and the rest of them are about to turn into raging forest fires. You know what I mean? It's just, you never really put them out. You just kind of manage. And that's which one do I want? But we made, other than brand new hires, mechanics or technicians or whatever, we were the least paid on that airfield for the work we were doing.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. And as MVP stated, this one's know your worth, know your certifications, and say if you were going to be like us and just walk away from that kind of occupation, right? It will get kind of confusing as to what sort of roles you can fit into afterwards. And this is kind of where knowing your job code can actually help you, right? This is kind of the good side of having these major, minor, broad groups, is because they have very similar knowledge, skills, and ability requirements. That if you were to just say, I'm walking away from this, I'm freaking done with it, you can relate those skills to something that sounds more appeasing to you, or something easier for you to do, or something more accommodating for you, right? Say being an aircraft manufacturer is not for you, or being a aircraft maintenance technician is no longer your cup of tea. What can that translate to? besides like, well, I know how to use tools and I know how to fix things, but maybe your ability to diagnose a problem and chase down and find a solution can actually make you into something of an analyst, or make you something towards a continuous improvement engineer, something to that effect. Something that you never would have thought yet you could do, but somehow your previous skills relate. And that's kind of like how where we are today. Like, granted, it's still along the lines of aircraft, but the stuff that we do now is significantly more broad than what we used to do. Like, if I really wanted to, I can go work on parachutes right now if I freaking wanted to, which is nowhere near what I'm used to doing, but I can do it.
Right. But you could. Yeah.
And that's, again, it's based off my knowledge of the occupation code, my knowledge of what skills relate to it or into that particular group, and what sort of things can I leverage into the next. And that's kind of like the goal with this episode too, as well. Is like, know your worth and know what your skills can transfer or relate to afterwards. It's not just like bashing like, well, your math is wrong here because you're using this strat instead of this one. It's terrible in some degree, but it can also work out for you and as well, because you can crosswalk from one occupation to the next, knowing full well that your skills have
yeah, I mean, if you are interested in a career change or whatever, you kind of know areas you can look for where your skill set, like Six said, transfers to. You can, okay, well, I've done aviation, but I'm tired of this aspect of aviation. What can I do? Oh, the forest industry, a lot of these logging companies are using, quadcopters and these big expensive drones to map out properties that they're going to go log, or they use helicopters to with these. It's a giant chainsaw blade. Essentially, it's a bunch of rotating discs that hang from a helicopter as it flies, and they run them down the sides of power lines to clear keep branches away from the power lines. To firefighting, in that realm, working on firefighting equipment, or you name it.
Yeah. So that's like the cool part about all this occupation code stuff. And again,
you can even go work for Bentley Automotive. They only hire A&P mechanics or EASA to work on their cars. And Rolls-Royce is the same way, I believe.
Yeah, I want to say you're right. And then Rolls-Royce also makes aircraft engines too. So if y'all didn't know that.
Yep, they do. There's a factory not far, or an overhaul facility, not far from where I grew up. Also, F1 car race teams employ certified aircraft maintenance technicians to work on their vehicles. And why do they do that, right? Because our standards are so much higher than those of the automotive industry. I'm not saying we're better than the automotive techs or whatever else, but what I'm saying is that because of the nature of the beast, we have way tighter tolerances and stricter standards, which vehicles performing at that on the brink of destruction at all the time, i.e. F1 cars, like everything's got to be held together. So,
right.
Just some gee whiz information there.
I'm gonna make a turn for the light real quick when you mentioned like things are operating almost to the near point of destruction. That reminds me of a joke or a situation where we always have with certain department managers, and we would say to them, we can either have it fixed or you can have it on time. Pick one.
Pick one, yeah.
you can't have both. And then they're like, no, I want it fixed, I want it on time, and I want it done safely. Like, whoa. Safe now?
Safe now? You can't throw safe into the mix. That's a whole other can of worms. Like, you can't have it like, well, what are you talking about? Well, I can have it running for about $12 in about 30 seconds. Or I can fix it. But we're going to be waiting on parts for several months, and it's going to cost about $400,000 to do.
They're like, let me see those numbers. 412,000. Oh, you rounded. You averaged it down.
Rounded down. Yeah, you rounded down. Well, okay, so let's say you did the $12 fix. What does that entail? Well, see, that's where the safety aspect comes in. I'm going to grade it on how fast you should walk by this piece of equipment when it's running. And I'm going to suggest you run past it.
Right.
Because it could let go at any time. But it'll run. You know, like, it's just, it's kind of how it was, man. It's like, well, it'll definitely make the flight schedule. All right. But I'm going to need you to not ask any questions of how we got there.
I need
what does that mean?
Really cool.
No, I just said don't ask questions. We can either fix it, but I'm going to go ahead and need you to remove that from the flight schedule for the next 2 weeks. Or we can make that flight schedule tomorrow, and I'm just going to, and we can do that as long as a bunch of people get real cool about a bunch of stuff real quick, you know?
Absolutely. Was it fixed, running, safe? That's like the holy trinity of maintenance. Like, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's
just not gonna happen. It's like just by how but like when you said not safe, like how on a scale of 1 to 10, how unsafe? I'm like, well, how I would gauge it by how fast you should pass by it, because the quicker you get through it, the higher your chances of survival.
Yeah, you don't want to linger in that area. It will kill you.
So do you want it fixed or do you want it on time? Either way, it's not going to be safe. That's freaking terrible. That's a terrible thing to say.
That's how it is, though.
It happens a lot, but you know there's certain redundancies. So we're kind of exaggerating a little bit on the unsafe part, but there's been some shady shit that goes on, but it's nothing so shady that it's gonna destroy everything in the matter of seconds or endanger your life. That's like our number one thing here is to make sure that, you know, like no lives lost. There are some things where it would be smarter of you to pass by this generally fast, but yeah, jokes aside. but again,
that's how it be.
That's how it be. Going back to these occupation codes, like we said, like it's about knowing your worth. It's about knowing what you can do, knowing what you can leverage, and then if you decide to transfer, where can you go to next? And then also how to class up on your occupation too. Like if it says the median income is this and the top 2% is this, like, okay, well, what's driving the top 2%? Like what's making them different?
Yeah, what sets that 2% apart? And
right.
Then going for it.
Yeah, like the top 2% are sheet metal and NDI technicians or NDI certified. Oh shit, let's do that. Or they know how to do the CMM. I don't know if you guys ever heard of CMM. It's like the cloud matrix machining, where like they create like laser points in a 3D graph, and then it can map out exact tolerances of things. Is that something that a general aircraft mechanic going to use? Probably never. But you can, if you know how to use it, that can be a fantastic thing when it comes to tools or when it comes to measuring out tolerances for things that's.
Yeah, or because you have that ability, you can approach your company and say, hey, we don't currently do this, but we could save X amount of time from having to, and money from having to source out to a third party vendor. I've already got the skill set. All we need is the equipment, and we can do this in-house and start providing that service to customers, right? Instead of having to hire out a third party.
Oh,
it just adds that much more, valuableness of you to your company.
Absolutely. Just so many different ways you can slice this, and again, knowing what the codes are doing or knowing what it's worth, and knowing like what the performance is going to look like can really help you in mapping out your career in itself. And then like, what's the next class up from there? Like, okay, I'm an aircraft maintenance tech. What's the next step? Or what's the next higher achievement that I can get besides getting an inspector authorization?
Now, one thing I did notice is like, it's the next step going into supervision management. I went down through those drill codes of the management side of things, or the supervision of these maintenance occupations, but there's nothing that went specific for aviation, which I thought was interesting. So I don't know where they would draw data from for management in a aviation realm. So
right.
Yeah, so that's something interesting I did notice about this too. It only talked about the maintainer side of things, but not the aviation maintainer management side of things. So kind of interesting.
That's right. You know, I think when it comes to managers, they start going into like a different job code almost, you know? Like what was that one? 49 1000. It starts going back to the 49 1000, the master major group code.
That's what I'm saying. I went down through and even it drilled down to the 49 10 11 and still didn't get specific on aviation maintenance supervision. So kind of, I don't know where then the Bureau of Labor and these SOC draw data from in that realm.
That's true. You're right. That's something interesting. I mean, if somebody out there, one of the audience members knows, or he can explain a little bit better, where do you feel these airfield managers or tech leads or shop floor chiefs should fall in, please let us know. We're all about that. We're all about expanding our knowledge. And if it contradicts what we've said before, by all means, as long as we're all moving in the path of progress where we know that we can all jive on the same sheet of music and actually make things better. That was a lot.
Exactly.
Man. That was a lot of info, man, especially with these codes, man. Like,
yeah, it gets confusing.
It gets real confusing.
It really does. And I'm sure as I read through it, I'm sure I'm missing something in there too that whoever works for the Bureau of Labor would, well, technically, and they'd put on their nerd hat and code me into oblivion, but
right. But by all means, like if you're in the US and you want to learn more about this stuff, go to bls.gov or ownitonline.org or see some articles by organizations like the Aircraft Mechanics Fraternal Association and others like that actually pull these kind of demographics so it's easier for you to digest. I would also suggest, like, if you're in the military or you're looking to transfer occupations from one to the next, look up ONET online and see the crosswalk section of how one job can relate to the next, or what's like the easiest translation from one to the next. That'd be a good thing for everyone too. I mean, I was venting the MVP a little bit ago about how my previous job code in the Marines actually initially translated to be a fucking clerk. I was fucking pissed.
Yeah, so that's what we were like. I was like, damn, we couldn't get away from it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pissing me off. Like, how the fuck am I a clerk? I know for a fucking fact I wasn't a clerk. I mean, that's long since obsolete, but that's at least what the site said. But that did kind of piss me off at first. Like, this is some bullshit. Like, how am I still being classified as a clerk? I'm just never can get away with it. But again, if y'all want to mess around with it, we've mentioned the links a bunch of times, and it'll be on the show notes too when we publish this episode. So feel free. Any final thoughts at all for this, MVP?
No, I think we pretty much hit my final thoughts of the know your worth. What's that lyric from a Drake song? Know your something, know your worth. Anyways, I'll leave it on that with that half-assed lyric reference by Drake.
Not our strongest suit. And again, if you guys have any questions, comments, you want to say something to the show, or you want to look something up or correct us on something, let us know in the comments on our social medias, direct message us on social media, or send us an email from our website. Either way, whichever is easiest for you, we're always down to listen and hear what you have to say. Or consider being a patron and join our Discord, and we really get involved with the patrons there. Like, I think our conversation with them is like daily by the hour, and some of the stuff we share is just like some pretty deep stuff and a lot of cool things that we ourselves have never learned about. So good knowledge shared there. Definitely suggest, if you guys really want to be in contact with us all the time or share some stuff, that consider joining Patreon and then joining our Discord channel. On that note, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. We'd like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to continue to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners, with special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Ryan Frushauer, Dan Schubert, Jenny Dignan, and the ladies of the Dick Talk and Mimosas podcast. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. Visit our shop at cancelformaintenance.com and grab some swag to show off both your support for us and your prowess as an aircraft technician. If you have ideas for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit our contact us section and send us a line. We will do what we can to get your ideas or yourself on the show. You can also follow us on social media, such as on Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at Canx, that's CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or on Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Check out some of our affiliates like Rockwell Time, where they make both rugged and classy watches to fit your lifestyle. Use the code CX4MX and save 10% off your purchase. Support us on Patreon. Our patrons get exclusive perks such as access to our Discord, discounts and early access to merch, special patron-only episodes, and so much more. Thank you again so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.